Hey, what's going on, guys? I am Follygon, and in this quick video, I'm going to show you my #1 tip for all ZBrush users. Now, normally I might say for new ZBrush users, but frankly, this is something that I see a lot of people that have been using ZBrush for a long time mess up as well. It's a little something called reprojection, and it's incredibly easy to do. But before we look at how to do it, I'm going to show you why, using this simple head from a recent sculpt. The first reason why you might want to use reprojection is as you're sculpting and using something like Dynamesh or Sculptress Pro, eventually you're going to get to a point where as you're working, increasing your resolution, and continue to sculpt, you might have a lot of trouble controlling your surface and keeping it clean. The more polygons you have, just as a rule of thumb, the more difficult it becomes to control your form. So even with using the smooth brush here, as well as things like trim brushes to attempt to flatten the surface, you can see that it's still pretty messy. Now the color hides some of that, but over here we can see where that mess is, and if I turn off the color and maybe switch to more of a clay-like material, you can definitely see where that messy surface is. Using reprojection, this tip that I'll show you here in just a moment, we can very easily clean this up. The second major reason why we might want to use something like reprojection is to make large changes to our model. It is unbelievably difficult to make large changes to the proportions of this character's head without warping or changing and messing up my form. A really good example of this is just using a large move brush and pulling out on the surface. You can see where the brush's fall off stops and begins. Now there are ways to alleviate this with this brush specifically, but this is a huge problem in general. Once again, easily fixed with reprojection. So how do we do it? Well, the first step is to activate a little something called history recall. If you hold down the control key and click up here on your undo history, you'll see a little gray marker get placed there. That is marking a position in your undo history, and you'll see why it's called history recall here in just a moment. The second step is to scroll down in the tool menu until you find Z Remesher. Now I'm going to keep this on all of the default settings here and simply click on Z Remesher. Now that that is finished, I'm going to scroll up and find this little menu here that says project. Go ahead and open that up, subdivide your model by pressing Ctrl D on your keyboard, and click on project history. If you have any poly paint or color, you can go ahead and click on always yes. So let's zoom in to get a better look at what exactly happened there. If I press Ctrl Z to take a quick step back and Ctrl Shift Z to take a quick step forward, we can see how the form from this previous marker, as well as the poly paint data, has been projected onto our current mesh. I'll press Ctrl D and project history one more time, and I'll do it a third time just for good measure. Now what we have with our current model is instead of having a solid Dynamesh piece of geometry that was around 3 million polys, we have something at close to about 500,000, getting around the same level of resolution. Not only that, but we also have something called subdivision levels, which we can step up and down to work on our model at. What's amazing about subdivs, if you're unfamiliar with them, is that any changes you make on the lowest subdivision level carry up to the highest. That also means that any changes you make on the highest subdiv will also take place on the lowest. So now, if you want to make a big change on your model, maybe with your move brush for example, you can step down to your lowest subdivision level, make a very large change here, maybe pulling out and inflating on this entire area for the jaw, and step back up your subdivision level chain without having any major stretching or warping. Now, because we can work on these lower subdivision levels, that also means that when we're having trouble with our surface, we can step down and clean it up on a lower level. So I'll go ahead and toggle off my paint one more time here and try to smooth this out. And I'm still having trouble doing that, so let me step down one subdiv. Let me try to smooth that a little bit more. And of course, we do have to be careful with the smooth brush as it is very destructive. So I'll press gently now with my pen, step down one more subdivision level, continue to smooth, clean that up, and there we go. So let's step up, make sure that's nice and clean, step up one more time by pressing the D key on our keyboard, and continue to smooth for our final pass. And just like that, we have a nice clean surface for our model. So there are two quick examples for how you can use reprojection to better work with your mesh. Like I said, this is something that I see a lot of people get wrong, so hopefully you found it helpful. If you did, click that like button, and if you'd like to learn more about digital sculpting, check out the links down below. With that, that's going to be all for this one. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.